Have you ever felt it? That quiet, heavy stillness? Not the stillness of peace, but of paralysis. It's the feeling of watching the world moving fast forward while you are permanently paused. Your mind screams to move, to do something, anything. You push, you plan. You try to force the gears to turn, but they only grind against an invisible resistance. And with every failed effort comes that familiar, hollow ache of shame. The whisper that says you are falling behind, that you are broken. But what if I told you that feeling is not a sign of your failure? What if that profound, frustrating inertia is actually a sign of your soul's intelligence? This is not a prison you have fallen into. It is a sacred summons. This is a foundational teaching from the great psychologist Carl Jung. He understood that this feeling of being stuck is not a problem to be solved, but a purposeful, critical phase in your journey toward wholeness. It is your psyche, your deepest self, intentionally putting on the brakes. It's a signal that the path forward is no longer found outside of you. It's a direct invitation to begin a different kind of work. Not the work of pushing harder, but the work of turning inward. The courageous journey we call shadow work. Because the energy you are so desperately seeking to move forward is not lost. It is simply locked away in the parts of yourself you were taught to ignore. In this space, together, we will explore why this feeling holds the key to your freedom. We will learn to stop fighting the stillness and start listening to its secrets. Let's begin by giving this feeling a name. Let's call it the invisible prison. A prison without bars, without walls, yet more confining than any physical space. The wardens of this prison are the voices of comparison, the ghosts of past expectations, and the relentless pressure of a world that worships movement, productivity, progress. In this world, stillness is not a virtue. It is a sin. And so you try to break out. You listen to the podcasts. You read the self-help books. You set new goals. You tell yourself, this month will be different. This year, I will finally move forward. But the prison floor feels like quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. And the silence in your cell becomes deafening. I want to share a story with you, a story that may feel familiar. It's about a woman named Sarah, a teacher in her late 30s. From the outside, Sarah had built a life that ticked all the boxes. A stable job she was good at, a small but cozy apartment, friends who cared for her. Yet for nearly a year, she had been living inside this invisible prison. She would come home from a day of shaping young minds, and the moment she closed her front door, the weight of her own life would crush her. She described it as a thick, gray fog that filled her apartment, muting all color, all joy. Her weekends, once a source of recharge, became vast, empty deserts of time she had to somehow survive. She would scroll through social media, seeing friends traveling, starting new businesses, getting married. Each picture was not a source of happiness for them, but a fresh brick in the wall of her own prison. Each post was a testament to her own inertia. The warden's voice would get louder. See? Everyone is moving. What's wrong with you? She tried everything. She took up pottery, hoping to shape something beautiful out of her emptiness, but her hands felt heavy, disconnected. She joined a book club, hoping to find stimulation in stories, but the words on the page felt like a foreign language. She even forced herself to go on dates, hoping a new connection might spark her back to life, but she felt like a ghost at the table, a hollow echo of a person, just going through the motions. Her energy, her psychic life force, was leaking. It was leaking into the endless cycle of trying and failing, leaking into the shame of not being who she thought she should be. The most exhausting part for Sarah wasn't the lack of progress. It was the constant draining effort of pretending at work that she was engaged, pretending with friends that she was fine, pretending to herself that tomorrow the fog would lift. Pause here for a moment and ask yourself, honestly, Where in your life are you pretending? Where are you expending enormous energy, not to move forward, but just to maintain the facade of being okay? This exhaustion is a critical clue. It's the first whisper from the part of you that knows the truth. The part that Carl Jung would say is trying to get your attention. The truth is, the strategies Sarah was using were all designed to break out of the prison. But the core teaching of this work, the profound insight from Carl Jung, is that you are not meant to break out. You are meant to turn around and face the back wall of your cell. Because the prison is not empty. You are not in there alone. There is something else in there with you. Something you have spent your entire life trying not to look at. This is the source of the resistance, the anchor that keeps you stuck. It is the part of you that holds all the feelings you weren't allowed to feel. The anger you had to swallow, the desires you were told were selfish, the creativity you were told was impractical. We call this the shadow. And the reason you feel so utterly drained, so paralyzed, is because your soul has made a profound unconscious decision. It has decided that the cost of pretending, the cost of leaving your shadow behind yet again, is now higher than the cost of standing still. Your system is not broken. It is in a state of sacred protest. It is refusing to take one more step forward without all of you. The fog Sarah felt wasn't a sign of her emptiness. It was a smokescreen. A protective haze created by her own psyche to stop her from trying the same old, failing strategies. It was a forced slowdown, a divine intervention designed to make her so uncomfortable with her external life that she would have no choice but to finally look within. This is the first shift in understanding. Your stuckness is not a punishment, it is a protection. It is the most loving, albeit painful act your soul can perform. It is a desperate attempt to guide you away from the life you think you should have and toward the life that is waiting to be lived. So how do we begin to listen? How do we start this inner work, this shadow work, not with force, but with reverence? That begins with a single courageous act, which we will explore next. The single, most courageous act you can take when you feel stuck is to do nothing. Not in a passive, defeated way, but in an active, intentional way. This is the act of sacred listening. It is the decision to stop shouting at the prison walls and to instead press your ear against them and listen to the vibrations coming from within. This is where the real journey of shadow work begins, not with a grand gesture, but with a quiet turning of attention. Let's go back to Sarah, our teacher, frozen in her apartment. For months, her inner dialogue was a loop of harsh commands. Get up, be productive, stop wasting your life. But what if she tried a different approach? What if instead of fighting the fog, she sat down in the middle of it, closed her eyes, and simply asked it a question? A question like, what are you trying to protect me from? Or, what is it that you don't want me to do anymore? At first, the only answer is silence, a heavy, uncomfortable silence. Our ego, the part of us that loves control and action, hates this. It feels like giving up. It feels like failure. But if you can stay with that silence just a little longer than is comfortable, something new begins to stir. A whisper rises from the depths. For Sarah, the whisper might sound like this. I don't want to pretend anymore. I don't want to grade another paper with a fake smile. I don't want to go to another brunch and talk about things that don't matter to my soul. This whisper is the voice of her shadow. And it is terrifying. Because this voice is the voice of everything she was taught to suppress. The good girl in her, the responsible teacher, the agreeable friend, all of these parts of her identity are threatened by this raw, honest voice. Her entire sense of self was built on being capable, on being pleasant, on never being a burden. The shadow's needs feel dangerous. They feel selfish. They feel like they could unravel her entire life. And here we arrive at the core of Carl Jung's genius. He taught us that the shadow is not evil. It is simply unconscious. It is a treasure chest in the basement of your psyche, holding all the parts of you that were deemed unacceptable by your family, your culture, and yourself. Think back to your own childhood. Were you praised for being quiet and compliant? Then your assertiveness and your righteous anger went into the shadow. Were you told that being an artist was an irresponsible dream? Your creativity and your playful spirit went into the shadow. Were you ever told, "Don't be so selfish," when you tried to state a need? Your ability to honor your own boundaries went into the shadow. These are not flaws. These are golden, powerful, essential parts of your wholeness. And your psyche, in its infinite wisdom, knows this. It knows you cannot become the full, vibrant person you were meant to be if you leave half of your soul locked in the basement. So it creates the crisis. It creates the stuckness. Your paralysis is not a lack of energy. It is an energy stalemate. Imagine it like a civil war inside of you. Your conscious mind, your ego, is the government in power. It wants to keep moving forward with the current agenda, be responsible, be nice, maintain the status quo. But your shadow self, the repressed population, has finally gathered enough strength to start a rebellion. It has gone on strike. It has blocked the roads. It has shut down the power grid. It is saying, with deafening silence, we will not move one more inch until our needs are brought to the negotiation table. We will not fuel this life anymore until we are seen, heard, and integrated. This is the secret of your exhaustion. You are not just tired. You are a nation divided against itself. All of your life force is being consumed by this internal conflict. So the question is not, how do I get my energy back? The real question that the shadow work asks is, what parts of myself must I reclaim to become whole again? When Sarah stops trying to fix her stuckness and starts listening to it, the fog in her apartment begins to change its nature. It's no longer just a gray, oppressive haze. It starts to have shapes. It starts to have voices. It starts to reveal the exiled parts of herself. She might remember the girl she was at 16, who painted for hours, losing all track of time, before she was told it was a silly hobby. That painter is in the fog. She might feel a flicker of the righteous anger she felt when a colleague took credit for her work, an anger she quickly swallowed because she didn't want to make waves. That fierce advocate is in the fog. She might hear the whisper of a deep yearning to spend a year living by the sea, a dream she dismissed as impossible and irresponsible. That adventurer is in the fog. This is the path to wholeness that Carl Jung mapped out. It is the process of individuation. It is not about becoming a perfect person. It is about becoming a complete person. It is about having the courage to walk down into the basement of your own psyche, to open the treasure chest you were afraid of, and to finally reclaim what is rightfully yours. Your stuckness is the map. Your exhaustion is the compass needle pointing not outward, but downward. Down into the rich, fertile darkness of your own being. It is not an empty void. It is the womb of your rebirth.
The womb of rebirth. Let that phrase settle in your heart for a moment, because it changes everything. If your stuckness is not a tomb, but a womb, then your role is not to escape it. Your role is to nurture it. This is the profound shift that moves us from paralysis to power. We stop seeing our stillness as an enemy to be conquered and start treating it as a sacred space to be honored. But what does that look like in a practical sense? The world outside demands action. Your bills still need to be paid. Your responsibilities don't disappear. How do you honor this inner process while living in the real world? This is where the true art of this inner work, this shadow work, lies. It is not about abandoning your life to sit on a mountaintop. It is about integrating this new awareness into the life you are already living. It begins not with a grand dramatic action, but with a series of small internal shifts in allegiance. You begin by changing the questions you ask yourself. For years, the question driving you has likely been, what's wrong with me? How can I fix this? This question is born from a place of self-rejection. It assumes you are a problem to be solved. The new question, the one that opens the door to your shadow, is gentle. It is curious. It is compassionate. The new question is, what part of me is asking for my attention right now? This simple change in inquiry is revolutionary. It shifts you from the role of a harsh critic to the role of a loving witness. You are no longer trying to get over a feeling, you are trying to get to know it. Let's return to Sarah one last time. Imagine her sitting in the quiet of her apartment, no longer fighting the fog, but breathing with it. She takes out a journal, a tool we often use in this work, and instead of writing a to-do list to feel productive, she writes this new question at the top of the page. What part of me is asking for my attention today? And she just waits. She doesn't force an answer. She listens. A memory might surface, a feeling, an image. Perhaps she remembers the sting of a dismissive comment from a parent years ago. Instead of pushing it away as old news, she gives it space. She writes, "The part of me that felt small and unheard is here today." She is not fixing the memory. She is simply acknowledging its presence. She is saying to that 16-year-old girl inside her, I see you. Your feelings were valid. I am listening now. This is the essence of what Carl Jung called integration. It is the process of bringing the exiled parts of yourself back home. Each time you do this, you are not losing energy. You are reclaiming it. You are taking a piece of your lost life force, a piece of your locked away gold, and bringing it back into the core of your being. As you continue this practice, something miraculous begins to happen. The internal civil war starts to quiet down. The rebels, the parts of your shadow, no longer need to scream and sabotage to be heard. They feel seen. They feel valued. And as they feel safer, they begin to willingly offer their gifts back to the whole. The fierce advocate who was exiled into your shadow because her anger was too much, she returns not as destructive rage, but as the clear, unwavering energy you need to set boundaries. The playful artist who was dismissed as impractical, she returns not as a distraction, but as the source of creativity and innovation that can solve problems in your career and life. The adventurer who is shamed for being selfish, she returns not as recklessness, but as the courage to finally listen to the calling of your own soul. The energy you thought was gone was never gone. It was just reallocated to a different department. It was fueling the resistance. And by doing this gentle, consistent shadow work, you are inviting that energy back to headquarters. The feeling of being stuck begins to dissolve, not because you pushed harder, but because the internal resistance has melted away. The brakes are released. The quicksand solidifies into firm ground beneath your feet. You will find yourself making new choices, almost effortlessly. You might say no to an invitation without a week of agonizing guilt. You might find yourself picking up a paintbrush, not to be a famous artist, but simply for the forgotten joy of it. You might start researching that life by the sea, not as a fantasy, but as a real possibility. This is the path to wholeness. It is not a straight line. It is a spiral. You will revisit these feelings. You will have days where the fog feels thick again. But you will be different. You will carry a new awareness. You will know that the fog is not your enemy. You will know it is a signal to pause, to listen, to ask the gentle question. You deserve to live a life that is fueled by all of you. Not just the good, acceptable, productive parts, but the wild, angry, creative, and gloriously alive parts too. The journey Carl Jung invited us on is the journey back to this wholeness. It is the greatest adventure you will ever take. And it begins now. Not by changing your life, but by changing the way you listen to it.
So we stand here now, at a profound turning point. We began in an invisible prison, feeling paralyzed and broken. We journeyed inward and discovered this prison was not a place of punishment, but a place of protection, a sacred pause, initiated by the soul. We then uncovered the secret held within that stillness, the voice of the shadow. We learned that this shadow is not a monster to be slain, but a treasure chest of our own exiled power, our unclaimed gold. And finally, we learn that the key to unlocking this treasure is not force, but a gentle, compassionate curiosity, a willingness to listen. This is the path to wholeness that Carl Jung illuminated for us. It is the journey of reclaiming all the parts of yourself. It is the end of the civil war. It is the beginning of your true life. A life lived not from a place of should, but from a place of deep, authentic resonance. The truth is, this work is not easy. It requires courage. It requires a quiet bravery to sit with discomfort, to face the parts of yourself you have been running from your entire life. But the freedom on the other side of that fear is immeasurable. It is the freedom to be fully, unapologetically, beautifully you. You deserve that freedom. You deserve to feel the full spectrum of your own aliveness. As a first step on this path, I want to offer you a small, practical invitation. It's a way to begin this practice of sacred listening today. Find a quiet moment. Take out a piece of paper or open a note on your phone. At the top of the page, write this question. If my stuckness could speak, what is the one thing it would be tired of me doing? Just one thing. Don't overthink it. Don't judge the answer. Just write down the very first thing that comes to your mind. Maybe it's tired of me saying yes when I mean no. Or tired of me pretending to be interested. Or maybe tired of me putting myself last. Whatever it is, just write it down. This simple act is the beginning of a new conversation. A conversation with your own soul. I invite you to share your answer in the comments below if you feel called to. Not the whole story, but perhaps just the one thing. By naming it, by bringing it out of the shadows and into this shared space, we lessen its power over us. We remind each other that we are not alone on this journey. Your story could be the permission slip someone else needs to hear today. Know that this is a safe space for your truth.
As you begin this practice of listening to your stuckness, a new, challenging question will naturally arise. Once you start reclaiming your own needs and desires from the shadow, you will inevitably bump up against a deep, culturally ingrained fear. A fear that has kept so many of us, especially women, trapped in the prison of people-pleasing for too long. The fear of being selfish. What do you do when honoring your truth feels like a betrayal of others? How do you navigate the guilt that comes with putting yourself first? That is the next crucial step in this journey of shadow work. And it is exactly what we will be exploring together in our next video. So I invite you to subscribe and to join us as we continue this profound adventure. The path is not always clear, but you are no longer walking it alone. You are not broken. You are becoming.